Hi, how are you? This is the chapter on commas. This chapter is quite long. I've broken it up into, I think, 5 or 6 parts. So we'll take each one and then we'll do an activity on it that you have to practice on it that you have to turn in. Um, so let's just get started. So first, let's talk about understanding what commas do. So I know you're familiar with commas. I know that you use them, but sometimes they're trouble for students. So let's take a look. So they're punctuation marks that help the readers understand a sentence. So a lot of the time people think commas as a pause, right? So you can actually use three sentences without a comma, with one comma, or with two commas, and they all mean different things. So you can take a read on that and think about it. I actually don't know. Um, uh, we're not going to go over what each meaning is, but think about it, okay? And what the difference is when you don't have any commas, when you have one comma, or when you have two commas, okay? So it's just to get you to start thinking about it. Now, this is the first part, and this is the one you're going to do practice on. It's practice using commas correctly, and this one is commas between items in a series, okay? So I think most people are familiar with this. Sometimes people make a mistake and don't put a comma here. We should have a comma before the and when it's a series of 3 or more items, right? So this is 4 items. So item 1, comma, item 2, comma, item 3, comma, and item 4. So let's take a look at an example sentence. To get from South Dakota to Texas, we will drive through Nebraska, comma, Kansas, comma, and Oklahoma. You do need that comma there. Okay. Um, just a second. Sorry, I don't know why this is being silly. I'm gonna push pause a second. Excuse me. Hello. So if we take a look, practice using commas correctly again. Commas between items in a series. So we had item 1, item 2, item 3, and item 4. Comma, 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 the word and our item. So if we go down to the next one, as we can sleep in the car, comma, stay in a motel, comma, or camp outside. All right, well, those are great choices, right? But they're 3 items in a series. I mean, sorry, they're 3 different um, items in a series. And also, after doing parallelism, right, we know that these have to be parallel, right? Good. We have the word or here. Here we have the word and. Both of those are fine because it's a list of things. As I drive, I see many beautiful sights, such as mountains, plains, and prairies. See item 1, item 2, and item 3. Okay, so we want to talk about commas between coordinate adjectives. Coordinate adjectives independently modify the same noun. Okay, there's another type of adjective called a cumulative adjective. It's not as common, but you do not need commas with them. I'll talk to you guys about that next. But when they're independently modifying the noun, you should put commas. For example, Connor ordered a big, fat, greasy burger. So you should have a comma after big, comma after fat, and that's it, because it's item 1, 2, 3, right? The diner food was cheap, delicious. I'm sorry, unhealthy and delicious. We're describing food, diner food, and we're talking about cheap, unhealthy, and delicious. Do not use a comma between the final adjective and the noun it describes. So we do not need a comma here, right? Because it's describing this. So for example, this is incorrect. J.I.L.L wore a long, clingy red dress. That's not correct. It's J.I.L.L wore a long, clingy red dress. Okay. All right, so those are called the coordinate adjectives. They're much more common. Just put a comma between them if they're modifying the noun in an independent way. Now this one, I spent a lot of time on these cumulative adjectives because actually they're an ESL issue because there's actually a specific, if you're not an ESL student, that's fine. It's just because native speakers just naturally know the order of cumulative adjectives. And there is a lot to learn about cumulative adjectives, meaning the order that they have to go in. But for our purposes, it's not really that common or that big of an error. So I'm not going to include that lesson in this commas um, activity. But just know if you do, probably at this level, you've probably already learned about cumulative adjectives. And that just means that they have to go in a certain order when they are put before a certain noun. But to be honest, it's easier just to remember that there's certain cumulative adjectives we use a lot. Like, for example, last store-wide clearance sale. When we're talking about sales, um, it for some reason we use a lot of these cumulative adjectives like flash sale, flash clearance sale, or last store-wide clearance sale, everything, right? So I don't know, maybe advertisers thought of it. But the idea is that the difference between this one, last store-wide clearance sale, is because they describe the same noun and they're not separated commas because they form a unit describes a noun. The idea that this thing all together describes this noun. Now, they also have to be in the right order. Can't say clearance store-wide last sale. That doesn't make sense. So that's why it's important. But honestly, if you just kind of learn the more like the one more common ones, that'd be more useful. Okay, so how do you know? Because if you put like and in each one of these, it doesn't make sense. Like it's last and store-wide and clearance sale. It's like, what? That doesn't make sense. Just last store-wide clearance sale. Okay. So you do not need commas with the cumulative adjectives when they all form a unit to describe one thing. Because these ones, long, clingy, red, like they can't form a unit. They're all three different things. All right, so you're not going to get a lot of examples with cumulative adjectives, or even need to know about it as much as you do, of course, with coordinate adjectives. Um, this activity covers not just coordinate adjectives, but it also does any other items listed in a series. So the first one, our example, is done for us. Now, this is different because some of them may be correct. So let's read this. Let's read the instructions. So edit the following sentences by underlining the items in the series and adding commas where they are needed. If a sentence is already correct, put a C next to it, okay? So let's look at this example. Sales of our fruit juices have expanded in the Northwest, the South, and the Midwest. So it didn't have a comment before. But first, this person underlined what the items in the series are: North, East, South, Midwest. But then they said, oh, but we need commas, right? So they had to add comma, comma, comma. Sorry, comma and comma, right? Because there's three things. Now, if we go to go to commas in a series with adjectives, I have made this for you so it's easy for you to write. Same thing. I did the example here, but please rewrite. Oh, something happened here. Oh, this is not right. Oh, yes, it is right. So please, this is the example answer where it says rewrite or C. Please, if it's correct, just put a C. That's all. That's if it's right. But if it's not right, put rewrite and then rewrite the sentence correctly, please, with the correct punctuation. That way it makes it much easier for me to correct it, okay? Instead of me having to look and you guys also not knowing exactly which pattern to use. So when you answer the questions, first read it, right? And then underline those things listed in the first sentence. And then if you have to rewrite it, please write it here. If you don't have to rewrite it, just write C. Okay, so you have 10 of those. All right, that's it for this video. I'm going to keep them separated so it's not too long. And you could easily refer back if you need help. Okay, thank you very much. I'll be on to the next.